You my bitch.
It's Broadway Comedy Club Radio, the only podcast that's also a comedy club, with your clearly above average hosts, Al Martin and Clayton Fletcher.
Thanks again, everyone. Welcome to Broadway Comedy Club Radio. I'm your host, Clayton Fletcher, and I'm very sorry. Right off the bat, this episode, we have to let you guys know that Al Martin is not on the air with us today. He may or may not be able to join later. Basically, he had an appointment that got rescheduled, and it was something very important that he can't be here right now, but he might be able to come on before the end. But instead, I get to talk to a friend of Al's who is a really interesting guy. He's an extremely well-known actor. He had a recurring role on The Sopranos.
This girl's fucking mustache, it must have been like kissing a fireman.
Well, you ought to know, sweetie.
What'd you say?
Nothing, what? We're just breaking balls.
Finn, what time's that game tonight? 8 o'clock, I think.
I'm gonna take a piss. Do me a favor, huh? Hold this.
Sopranos. He's also been in the movie The Irishman.
It's your fault. Say hello to your wife, huh?
I got a way you can earn to push those hindquarters. There's a guy in there, pay a lot of money for them. Well, let's shoot this first and then we'll talk business. At the other end of the bar, 12 o'clock. You see him, he's got to rescind the Irishman.
And most importantly, he was in a movie called, what was it again, Robert? What was the name of the play that you worked on at the club?
With Mike Boschetti, it was called Space Cookie.
Hey, I'm Robert Funaro. I'm the director of Space Cookie, a one-man show, a one-man extravaganza, starring one of my best friends in the world and one of the greatest comedians that I think in America. A very underrated comedian, Mr. Mike Boschetti to my right here.
Thank you, Robert. we're going to have a great time with this. Let me explain a bit about Space Cookie. It's an homage from the boys of Bunker Hill to Afghanistan and back. Everybody had served in the military from 1775 to 2019.
Space Cookie.
Space Cookie. So you probably, if I'm sure not that many people saw The Sopranos or The Irishman, but they'll definitely know the Space Cookie credit. So that's the big one as far as I'm concerned.
13th Street Theater. I mean, it's John and Boschetti always said John Cazales. Bobby John Cazales started here at this theater. I said, yeah, Mike, we're really doing good here. But we did the previews without. Thank you for the great introduction.
Yeah, absolutely. So he's Robert Funaro, actor, all around entertainer. Robert, have you done stand up?
No, I haven't.
Would you want to try sometime? Because we can use some more comedians. All the comedians are leaving New York because there's no comedy here right now. So we can I'm recruiting people.
Never say never, you know?
Yeah, right, for sure. But we really appreciate you taking the time to be here.
Clayton, I worked at Caroline's Comedy Club for quite some time, 7 years before I got my first real professional gig on Sopranos. So I know all the comedians who are just coming up, like Ray Romano, so many, Daryl Hammond, before Saturday Night Live, Kevin James, a whole slew, Greg Giraldo, when he first got his, received his first deal, a sitcom that didn't make it. He bought a motorcycle. We just looked at him with like our eyes crossed. Well, I hope it goes, Greg.
Yeah, Greg Giraldo
bought a motorcycle. You know.
Yeah, for those who don't know, the late Greg Giraldo, to me, was one of the best comedians in New York. But he kind of got famous for getting these development deals left and right. He ended up, before he died, I think he had a total of 6 different development deals, and none of which ever actually came to fruition. So if anyone ever wondered how difficult the comedy business is, Greg Giraldo was a major New York City headliner. He's headlining at Caroline's, at Gotham Comedy Club, at all the major clubs around the city. Of course, Broadway Comedy Club. He was everywhere, and he was respected by every single comedian. Like, he was one of the comedians that when he was on stage, the rest of us would come out of the green room to stand in the back and just want to hear what Greg Giraldo was going to say. That's how strong of a talent this guy was. And then, you know, he got discovered by the industry, and they're like, oh yeah, we need somebody like this. We could build a sitcom around him, or we can have him do his own talk show. He ended up getting all these different deals, and he never actually got his own show. It just didn't happen. So it just goes to show, like, getting a part on a TV series or you know, God forbid, having your own series is a much harder thing than it might sound like. Oh, all I have to do is get funny, you know. So you must have seen that over and over at Caroline's, Robert.
Well, yeah, then there are absolutely no guarantees, and a lot of I mean, I watched the trajectory of Lou is Black, you know, from the beginning. Lou was, he was a headliner, of course, and
A killer,
he
yeah.
did a killer headliner. He did a lot of different shows, but it wasn't until he got that spot on the TV. Which show was it? It was
The Daily Show. Back in
Daily
Black
Show.
on The Daily
That
Show. They
really
gave him his own
put- yeah.
3-minute segment every week.
That
Yeah.
put him on a map. But Jon Stewart, well, he was Jon Stewart and him, right? John is always a fair man and a fair guy, and John knew this plight. I think John was aware of the plight of these great talented comedians, even including Charles Fleischer, who to me was the comic genius, the greatest genius comic, because he would just make everything. He would go on the stage with nothing, and by the end of the show, he would know. And we would laugh our ass. Oh, excuse me. We would laugh really a lot because he was just great. He would just improvise the whole show based around the skeleton of what he would ask people what their profession was, and he would just improvise it. He was tremendous, Charles Fleischer. But yeah, a lot of comedians who are so funny. I mean, you know, never got their proper a wide audience, you might say, on TV. Oh, Susie Essman. Susie was doing, you know, a lot of different spots here and there, but it wasn't until Seinfeld that people became aware of her kvetching, you might say.
Yeah. Susie Essman.
I met Seinfeld. I did the 23 Hours to Kill. I went on this audition at, you know, I'm with the Atlas Talent Agency. I'm just saying, when I get commercials have all changed. But anyway, they called me in to do this spot for Seinfeld, 23 Hours to Kill. And you had to say one line, like to him, what are you doing after this? That was the line, because he has 23 hours to kill. You know, he has that 1 hour on stage. That was the premise of the plot of his show. And I just walked in and said, I'm never going to get this. Who really cares? What are you doing after this? And he chose me. So I get to meet him, and I met his whole entourage, you know, no green room stuff, because it's just a little spot. I played a stagehand, you know, and then a friend of mine took a picture. It was my only proof, because he cut me out of the promo, of the trailer promo. So that was my one thing I did with Seinfeld. But I never knew Seinfeld. I never met Seinfeld from Caroline's, because him and Caroline, I don't think they were ever, they may have been in the beginning simpatico, but he never really was tested his material at Caroline's. I know he came down to Gotham with Chris Mazzilli. See, I know all the guys with Chris, and maybe Al's, but I don't know if he came to Al's place to test the material, because they all do that, you know.
Yeah, they do. But no, I don't think that we ever had Seinfeld at Broadway. He basically, once Gotham opened, that was pretty much where he would do his stuff. And of course, the Comedy Cellar downtown.
That's famous. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I know he wasn't at Caroline's or Broadway. I don't know. I always kind of wondered about that, because, you know, the clubs that are in Times Square, which basically now are only 3 of them. It's
I heard Caroline's closed. Is that true?
No, Caroline's is open. I mean, well, they're closed temporarily, but
okay.
You know, Dangerfield's closed permanently.
Oh, okay.
And we've been wondering, you know, who's going to be next. But yeah, I think sometimes the audiences that they're looking for, like the Times Square clubs, attract the same audience that other Times Square businesses will tend to attract, which is kind of an international tourism audience. So you could have anyone in the crowd. They could be anywhere from some, you know, couple from Ohio all the way to, a group of college kids from Australia. And
Yes.
the clubs like the Comedy Cellar and Gotham, they attract a more of a local audience. Of course, they'll get some tourists in there as well, but it's more of a local audience. So I always wonder if that was partly why some of these comics want to perform there.
Yeah, I think that definitely what you're saying. They had a more of a touristy composite in Caroline's, and all the, I don't know if Al too perhaps gets a little bit of that because he has some of that there also, people looking to do something. But yeah, I think that's true. I think that all like the Cellar and Gotham, those are places where comedians can kind of test their material. I mean, Jim Gaffigan, he was early Carolines. I knew Jim from early Carolines, very sensitive guy.
Yes.
Auditioned for his show multiple times, Jimmy. And I knew his manager, I'm not going to name names, but anyway, never got on the show. But hey, listen, I don't think Jimmy liked me too much, but what'd I do?
Well, here's the thing about Jim Gaffigan.
When you come around, I guess early on, comics are sensitive to people. And then when you're trying to juxtapose like 225 people, you don't have time to talk. And maybe I said something to him. Who cares?
Well, no, here's the thing, Bobby. When it comes to Jim Gaffigan, everybody thinks he doesn't like them. So, I don't know what that tells us, but I know very few people that actually say, oh, yeah, Jim, he and I are very close friends. He really likes me. But I mean, amazing talent. If anyone listening to this or watching this on YouTube hasn't seen Jim Gaffigan's work, I mean, just as the structure of his material, the way he fits so many jokes per minute, if you will, just the way the writing is so perfectly tight. He never has any extra meat on the bone. But yeah, he is known to be a very sensitive guy, and so I definitely wouldn't take it personally. All right, so Bobby, with that, let's talk about your career a little bit, because here you are working on the staff as a manager at Caroline's, right? But you really wanted to be an actor, or was this just kind of a side hustle while you were still acting at the same time? What was going on then?
No, I wasn't acting. Here and there, I was always in the game a little bit, but it was all happened for me because, and even the job itself, my best friend, Gordon Silva, bartender at Gotham, and also Caroline's, you might know him.
Sure,
great
we
guy,
know Gordon.
Great personality.
Yeah, nice guy.
And Gordon went at a party, the second season of Sopranos, when James was blowing up. He was at some sort of party, and he went up to James, and he had the cojones to say to him, hey, I know a friend of yours you did a European tour with, Streetcar Named Desire. I played Stanley, he played Mitch. And if I was you, I'd get him a job on Sopranos. So James, he's a very humble guy, he had a lot of humility. Well, you know Bobby? Yeah, how's he doing? He's working at Caroline's, he's a manager there and everything. They shot they shoot the stuff with it together. And James remembered, and on season 3, because we did this tour, and I met him one time between the tour, it was like 8 years between that tour. We toured Scandinavia for 3 months. That's another story. But anyway, James remembered, and he came down to Caroline's, and I was managing. And I walked down, and I saw him at the front bar having a drink. And I said, hey, what's going on? Great success. Congratulations. And he said, well, I'm going to cut to the chase. There's a part on the show. If you'd like to audition, I can't guarantee you a part, but I'll get you an audition. A friend of yours told me that you're working here. And he had his driver drive around a couple of comedy clubs because he couldn't remember the club. He's got so much on his mind. Anyway, it was the second one he went to. So the second one he went to, I don't know which the first one was. It might have been stand-up. And I auditioned for Georgianne Walken, who had an office at 1500 Broadway. Caroline's, I think, was 1426, right across from the Brill Building. And I stayed overnight when I had the audition. I really, practiced and improvised, and I landed, to make a long story or a short story even longer, I landed a role on Sopranos. That's how I started my first professional gig. And from then on, I've been working professionally.
Yeah. So that was in
the great Cinderella story.
Cinderella story, right? Yeah. So when
and Caroline spoke to me oh, you know James? I had a conversation with, sorry, Caroline, but that was really our biggest conversation we had in about 7 years. Oh, you know James? It's funny how the doors open up. Open sesame.
Yeah, well, it is interesting,
Let me
but
let you in now.
yeah. So Caroline Hirsch,
Yeah.
the owner of Caroline's, now her name is on the door, and she does kind of oversee the operations there. But she's really known as behind the scenes, like in the shadows, kind of club owner, right? I mean, she's not really known for mingling with everybody. So if she spoke to you, that's kind of well, she does exist. You know, sometimes people wonder if she's
Before
even
that,
real.
Clayton, it was the
Just the head nod. Yeah, just the head
hello.
nod.
Hello. How are things? Okay. Great. How many people we have in that? I mean, let me check the book.
Check the book and that's it.
220. Okay. Oh, not even an answer. See you later. Thank you.
Right.
Now, Lou Ferranda, I don't know if you know him. I think Lou's still there.
Yeah, he
Greg
is.
Charles, great guy. Greg Charles, great guy. Love him. And Greg was always great. We used to have a lot of fun together. And Lewis, we had a lot of fun with him too. He's a real character.
Yeah, but we want to talk about James Gandolfini. I mean,
Okay, you want to talk about Jimmy?
the late James, or as you call him, Jimmy, because you're friends like that. I want to hear about the tour. I've been to Sweden a number of times, Norway, a little bit, Finland. I want to hear about your Scandinavian tour. That must have been wild.
Yeah, it was directed by this woman, Judy Richards, and we auditioned on Theater Row. And the first time I met James, he was playing Mitch. He just was so he had a short sleeve white shirt on. He had the Mitch glasses on. You know, I said, this guy is Mitch from, he is the Carl Malden, or he is Mitch from Streetcar, and he was sweating. But we hit it off. And Scandinavia, and you've been there, it was a challenge. In Sweden, we started in Sweden. There were wonderful theaters. But then as the tour progressed, it became like bars and remote places where people would gather to see Streetcar. And we had we all had to help with the set. By the time it was over, it was all dilapidated. But we had this great Jimmy Conway. He designed a set that was mobile, that can be folded, and
so you were the cast and the crew, is what you're saying.
We were the cast and the crew, and Finland was okay, and Norway was really. There really aren't any theaters there. I think in Finland we might have played one nice theater there, or maybe a couple of nice theaters. But as we ended the tour in Norway, it was more like bistro bars that we did that we did Streetcar. Kind of weird, but we had a good time, and it was a very good production. And Jimmy was really. I'll tell you one story. We went to Elsinore Castle, and we had a couple of days off in Denmark. So there's a castle of Shakespeare, and we toured the castle, and in the bottom bowels of the castle, there were the dungeons, and they had one dungeon, and it was roped off, and we were told that a prisoner, someone who did something seriously bad, they would close. It was triangular. It was like a triangular cell. And what they would do is they put this plywood or something, and the torture was to eventually close them all the way back into the corner. So that you would do 1 week with, and then they would take another piece of plywood, insert it, and then until you were all the way in the corner, and then you died of starvation. So it was really a primitive torture. So Jim said, "Come on, let's go." And I said, "What do you mean, let's go?" My friend John was there also. He was in the show. "What do you want to do?" He said, "We're going to go to the very, very point where the person's cringed." And I said, "Are you nuts? They're going to yell at us. We're going to get in trouble. Come on, let's go." So he took me all the way back to that place. And it was pretty fearful. But that's the way Jim was. He took these chances. He did what others wouldn't do.
Yeah.
And that's what made him a great actor. He really took a lot of risks.
Yeah, well,
I always tell that story to explain how he was. Like on Sopranos, there was a golf scene that we were doing. We had a kind of had a shakedown a person at the country club, and we were in the golf cart and I had him. My only line was to pull up and say hello or say, I'll see you later. That was the line because he had to talk to this person at the golf club. So Jimmy says to me, I'll give you $3,000 if you take the golf club and you drive it into the pond. And he was serious. There was a pond, those little ponds in the golf.
Yeah.
He just said to me, I can't do it. Come on, let's go. Let's do it. I said, no, if you get hurt, I've lost this job. Even though I've been on for 2 years, it's still, I'm going to be the guy responsible for breaking Tony Soprano's neck. So I'm not doing it. But he was serious. He wanted me to do it. And you know what? If I told him, if I dared him, if I would have said, I'll tell you what, let's change seats and you do it. Maybe he would have. I don't know. I think he would have.
Well, one thing that they do teach in acting school and in acting classes is that you have to take chances and kind of think. You don't want to say all your lines in the most obvious way. And so I think that type of thinking, with the amount of acting that man got to do in his life, it probably bled over into just his everyday personality. Like, let's take some chances, let's go see the torture chamber. Let's go drive the golf cart into the water trap or whatever it's called.
Acting, Clayton, is once you're there, once you're on set, once the lights, the camera, the action, the grips, and everyone's there, you have to block all that out, and you need to not be intimidated by that, and to, of course, you get coached or you're trained, and you follow your plan, your intention, and you don't let that. And so it takes a lot of risks to, especially if you're working with directors that you have no knowledge of, to really execute.
Yeah, you have to go for it
without fear. You there's Law and Orders, there's the Blue Bloods, there's a lot of different shows, and they have a certain cadence. The people speak in a certain way, they're written in a certain way. And when I worked with Martin Scorsese twice, I noticed that he allowed us to have ourselves bleed into the role. For instance, my take in Irishman, not taking anything away from Steve Zalian, the skeleton is there, but there were some things that I added in, and he took the take that I added some dialogue to, because that was coming from a more filtered through me, through my experience. So James definitely filtered a lot of his experience, Tony Soprano, and many, many roles from his life. He was able to take those risks and, how should I say, open the book so people could see those vulnerabilities, the anger. If you see, sometimes I see these videos I never saw before of James dealing with people who are bothersome paparazzi, and he's going to kill the guy. It's just like, and I'm saying to myself, well, that's really a little bit of Tony Soprano right there coming out. His privacy was part of Tony Soprano's anger, and James was able to transition that into and use that. I'm not saying he was like that, but he used that anger. And I guess I never forget what Charles Lipton said to him, that question at the Actors Studio. He said, what would you do if you were God? And if you had one thing you could say to God? That's a great question. So James said the greatest thing. He said, let me take over for a while. And I think he would have balanced the books for a lot of people, because he was such a generous and a man and of humility and kindness. And of course, when you get to that level, Clayton, you don't know who your friends are, who really is, who wants something. So he kind of cherished people like myself, who knew him before, after. So it took me a little while to understand, and I'm a little bit regretful that I never. And he asked me many times to do this, do that. And sometimes I couldn't. I had the family, but I wish I would have understood that he just wanted people that he really loved and knew.
Well, of course. And you shouldn't have any regrets about that, because at the same time you were living your life as well, right? I mean, we all have to do what makes sense for us in the moment. But yeah, I wanted to ask you, I don't know if you'll be able to answer this, but while you guys were working on The Sopranos, when you're shooting season 3, did you have a sense that what you were doing was going to end up being the iconic and an amazing special show that it was? Or did you just feel like, a guy that I toured with in Europe asked me to do a part on his HBO TV show and I'm excited to do it? Or was it somewhere in between?
The mystique for Sopranos coming in the second year was just tremendous. The attention it was getting. So I at that point, at the beginning of season 3, I knew this was going to be a show that was going to be remembered and cherished by many Americans as a I should say, a more nondescript piece of American, I say, the underworld that was quite, realistic in a way, and yet it did parody. It did have some satire. You see the difference between Martin's work and David Chase's work, but I do like both. I think that both are also credible. The New York and Jersey, that was a true, very, 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 very true, true story. So at that point on season 3, I would talk to Jimmy. He said, in 5 years, this is all going to be forgotten, but it's not forgotten. It's just timeless in a way. Because I've been watching that Peaky Blinders show, Peaky Blinders with Cillian Murphy. Really enjoying that, and it's really well produced and well written, also. And I don't know how big it was but they did have, when any show has 5 or 6 seasons, and they have a new season coming out, you got to know it's successful.
Yeah, for sure. Nowadays, these networks, well, I guess you don't even call them networks anymore, but platforms, they don't take chances with shows that don't catch on quickly. Unfortunately, it's just the way it is now. There's so much content out there, and the competition is more fierce than it's ever been. Like you referred to Seinfeld. Many of our listeners and viewers are too young to remember when Seinfeld was actually on the air, but it was appointment viewing, okay? Every Thursday night, you turned on your TV to watch what those crazy actors on Seinfeld were going to bring you that day, right?
The engine there was Larry David, and I think Larry David had it was a big part. Did he? Yeah. So, living in New York, and I've lived in New York, there are things that frustrate you, and people identify with that frustration of the day-to-day frustrations of living in New York. And of course, Kramer, my friend Gordon, I'm not going to name names, but Gordon's not like that. But there's a person who lives in his building that is the consummate Kramer. He wears a fur coat in the summertime.
Every building has a Kramer. That's
and
Manhattan
it's like
life.
He has this. It's true. It's just true. And every time I see him, there's some sort of absurd thing that he gave my friend gave Gordon a mask, and it's a whole thing, a helmet mask. And it's like,
okay, all right.
Like flips down, like it's like a steel flip down. I have a couple of these. You can want one.
Yeah, just got an extra one lying around. You could borrow it. Very strange. Yeah, but back in the day, there were only a few networks and a few places that you could find content. We didn't have platforms like, Netflix will have existed in the late 80s, early 90s at Seinfeld's peak, but it wasn't, it didn't have its own creations. Like Netflix was just a service, kind of like Blockbuster Video, where you could rent movies and get them in the mail. That's how Netflix started. Right. And of course, Amazon Prime wasn't even a thing yet. But now there are all these different platforms, Hulu making their own stuff, Amazon making their own stuff, and Apple is now in the business of content.
Live streaming. Yeah. Apple with the Justin Timberlake thing, which I want to watch. And it looks pretty good.
For sure.
That young kid who has a problem. He thinks he's a boy or whatever. But it looks like a credible series.
For sure.
And I worked with his wife, Jessica Biel, on Sinner, which was the first season, which was it was a great experience to work with her, and it was a very successful, and that was USA. So I think that HBO started, the network of HBO started this whole thing of producing. And that's where the people caught on. Well, we're making all this money. Let's produce our own thing. Because that, if we get a hit series, that's where the, of course, syndication and stuff, that's where everything shifted. And now, as you said, IMDb is producing and of course, Netflix. One thing I never got about Netflix is that they didn't want to release Irishman in the theaters. They did a limited run in the theaters. There was so much, and the New York Times gave The Irishman a great review. I said, wow, they could have made their money back basically in the first week with that review of The Irishman. And also getting back De Niro and Pesci and the amount of people in the Ray Romano, Bobby Cannavale, you know, all the people that were involved, Harvey Keitel, Al Pacino, all those guys together, that first weekend, and Netflix said, no, we're going to limit release it, and we're going to live stream it. But in a way, they kind of were ahead of their time in the sense of saying that major films could be seen on TV. Now, that being said, I don't think you can really replace the big screen and the directors who shot for the big screen, who imagined while they were directing what a moment would be like Martin, like in Taxi Driver, when I forgot his name, shows Travis Bickle his array of guns. When you see him place his hand over the guns in slow motion, and that's on the big screen.
On the big screen, yeah.
And you see those freeze frames. Those are great stuff on the big screen. I don't think you can really replace it. At the same time, where we are now, I kind of appreciate that we could still see some films, even if it has to be on our 72-inch screens. I don't have a 72, I have a 65, but
that's fine. I think that's
yeah. But I thought they were, and Netflix was ahead of their time, and they said they stuck to their guns, so they didn't care. Because don't you think they would have made their money back on the first weekend?
Of course, with a review like that from the New York Times, they could have packed every theater in the country.
And of course, when it first finally came out on Netflix, it's too long. It's this, it's that. But if you watch it again and again, you'll see more stuff. And you'll see the greatness of Scorsese and the acting. It's so well layered. And Pacino grows on you as Jimmy Hoffa. He really, truly does. The more I watch it from time to time, I say, you know, this is really great. And a lot of that stuff, when Casino first came out, I don't know if it was a big, gigantic hit, but it might have been. I don't know. I don't remember.
They said that was too long.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. We live in a TikTok, YouTube kind of world where people want things to be shorter.
I thought Vinyl was good. Vinyl, I thought was a credible series.
It was an amazing series, of course. Yeah. Well, you know what? One thing I can tell from talking to you, and you know, to be clear, full disclosure, you and I have never actually met before, but even this like brief conversation that I've been, you know, honored to have with you today, I can really sense that you have a passion for the art form of film and for acting in general. When you know, during this conversation, as you spoke about being an actor or being a creative person, like I can feel the passion coming through. But my question for you is this: did you always know that you wanted to be an entertainer? Like, are you from the type of family where, you know, you sing a song for grandma and she gives you a standing ovation? Is that kind of culture? Because that's how it was for me. So I always wonder from other performers, like, is that where you're from?
Yes, we would go to grandma's basement in Brooklyn on 20th Avenue. It was an unfinished basement. We'd have our pasta, our dinner, Christmas dinner, and then my cousin Joseph would pick up his guitar and we would pretend to be the Beatles, or we'd pretend to be Led Zeppelin. And when he started learning guitar, then me, my brother, and his brother Sal, Chippy, we would all get together and sing. And then my uncle, I was influenced by him because Monsignor, he was a priest in Catholic Charities in Brooklyn, and he had a parish, the Assumption Parish, in beautiful parish in downtown Brooklyn Heights. And he would put these plays to raise money for Catholic Charities. Eventually, he started a small theater group, but he ended up at Catholic Charities raising money with really great productions like The Music Man, Hello, Dolly. And he would get some of the people who were involved in the show to come to see it. And he graduated to like a 500-seat house, Christ the King High School. They had a really big theater. And so we would go to see, it was always an event every year to go see his shows. And he was a wonderful storyteller. And I guess I have a penchant for directing through him. I also like to direct. And I was given that talent. I think it was part of that talent he shared with me. So yes, I come from that kind of family.
So it's
I've always been involved in entertainment. I'm the second born. I'm left-handed. I don't see things in a linear path. My path is more zigzag.
Yeah, you fit the
I'm sure
profile,
if Al
right?
was here, he'd say that.
Yeah. So now, since Al can't be here today,
Yeah.
although for those on YouTube, we do have a lovely picture of Al for you to look at, even though you don't get to hear his beautiful voice. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Space Cookie, because that was really your first connection through the hilarious Mike Bichetti, our mutual friend.
Okay. I used to work in Times Square at a theater called the American Place Theater. I studied with the director there.
46th Street, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which housed many great plays and also helped many actors. Dustin Hoffman, Sam Shepard, Stephen Tessich, and God rest when he passed away of COVID-19. And he had a workshop acting class at Carnegie Hall. So at one time, when I was studying with him, I was married, and he offered me the class to work at his theater, and he would give me the class for free. So I was the receptionist there, and I met many people, Christopher Walken and Sam Shepard, and I got to be around with John Leguizamo when he blew up with his show, and that started in a downtown theater. So he's always been a man to win, champion. I wouldn't say lost causes, but giving people a chance who have done something, giving them a platform. So my connection to Al, I just wanted to mention that because I put Al in that category also, because when we really needed a place to preview Space Cookie, the one-man show with Mike Bichetti about his 4-week experience in boot camp, which he got booted out. His 4 weeks, it's hilarious, and we want to do it again. We needed a place because we were only going to get 5 days in the theater, and I said, Mike, if we don't get a place, it's going to be so hard for us to in 5 days. Usually, I couldn't afford to rent the theater, so I did some plays there, and Joe Batista, the artistic director of the 13th Street Rep, said, look, we're doing this Rogue Theater Festival. I'll give you the theater for 5 days. You guys just pay the stage manager money, and you can have the theater for free.
That's so nice.
Joe,
I don't think our listeners will understand how huge that is, because
Yes.
space in New York, especially performance space, is at such a high premium. In normal times, maybe not during a pandemic, but when there are audiences, performance spaces are very hard to find. So that is a huge favor that Mr. Batista did for you there.
Yes. And then Al, he stepped in and he said, and Mike asked him, and Al was generous enough to give us 1 day a week prior to when the show was ready, that Mike would go up there on stage. He promoted it. Al promoted. We had the graphic designer, Doc Ivan, from the Stern Show. I don't know if you know Doc. He's a great graphic designer. He loved Mike too. So we got a lot of free stuff because people loved Mike. And it was a wonderful and generous thing that Al did to give us, at least we had three or 4 weeks prior to doing the show opening. So it opened up Mike a little bit, and he can learn it a little bit better, because as an actor, you do need a little bit of preview, getting the audience in the theater before that, before you really open up with the start of the run, which progressively will get better and better. But you have to start somewhere. Without that, we would have been without Al's generosity, offering us Broadway, we would have been so far behind. We might have gotten little snippets correct, but never, to the degree that we achieved. Even the 5 days was too short, but I appreciated Al's generosity.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that Al is going to be really sorry that he was detained today and unable to join us, because I know he was really excited to catch up with you and talk to you. So I just hope that I've done him justice as far as
you're a wonderful host.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, we are actually just about out of time, but I wanted to give you a chance in case there's anything that I didn't get to ask you that you wanted to share with our following.
Sure, I'll cut to the chase again. I'm doing a live virtual cooking experience.
No kidding. Yeah, tell us about it. Cool.
Chefsfeed.com. The first one I did was Mama's Sunday Sauce, Mama Funaro Sunday Sauce. I sold out. We had 6 people in the workshop. And this one coming up next week on Thursday the 25th on chefsfeed.com. I'm making Mama Funaro's crab sauce / it also could be used for a lobster sauce. And I've started doing that. I have a lot of fun talking about the show, giving the recipe. It's kind of we actually made the Daily News this last week. Which was nice. On the Sunday edition of Daily News, my mom's picture was in the paper. I gave her a little 15 minutes of stardom. So it's on Chef's Feed, and I'm enjoying it. We talk about Sopranos, do the recipe. It's only about 45 minutes, so it's not too.
That sounds great. So that's a platform I'm not familiar with. Chef's Feed. Okay, so is that an app that we download, or how do we watch this?
You just go to chefsfeed.com, and then you'll look at experiences. And you'll see on the 25th, Thursday the 25th, Robert Funaro from The Sopranos is doing his mom is crab sauce. And that's on the 18th at 8 p.m. on the 25th at 8 o'clock.
And that's the 25th of February?
Yes, February, 8 o'clock.
Okay, got it.
And the next one will be next one. I do one a month.
You do one every month?
And it's a lot of fun.
Oh, that sounds terrific. So, yeah, definitely want to check that out on chefsfeed.com. And Bobby Funaro, we really appreciate you joining us today.
Clayton.
Yeah, thank you so much. So for the wonderful, talented actor / director / chef, Bobby Funaro, and for Al Martin, who is here in absentia, of course.
Al,
and for our terrific producer, Jay Frank. I'm Clayton Fletcher. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.
I just like to be.
Hi, Al Martin here, owner of the Broadway Comedy Club and Greenwich Village Comedy Club in New York City. And I just authored a great book on stand-up comedy and my 30-year journey called Did It on a Dare, How I Built a Comedy Empire in 30 Short Years. So if you want an interesting story on the comedy scene in the 90s and early 2000s up until the present, if you're an aspiring comic and want to learn about some of my golden rules of comedy from a comedy club owner, this is the book for you. It's available on Amazon, and just go to Amazon, click Al Martin, and it'll take you right to my page. It's available on audio and Kindle, as well as paperback. Thank you.